Najprawdopodobniej była to rakieta produkcji rosyjskiej, prawdopodobnie wyprodukowana w latach 70. rakieta typu S-300 i w związku z czym kolejne zasadnicze pytanie było, kto był odpowiedzialny za wystrzelenie tej rakiety, krótko mówiąc, kto wystrzelił tą rakietę. Nie mamy w tej chwili żadnych dowodów na to, że rakieta ta została wystrzelona przez stronę rosyjską. Natomiast wiele wskazuje na to, jest wysokie prawdopodobieństwo, że była to rakieta, która służyła po prostu obronie przeciwrakietowej, czyli że była użyta przez siły obronne ukraińskie.
We're still gathering information, but we have seen nothing that contradicts President Duda's preliminary assessment that this explosion was most likely the result of a Ukrainian air defense missile that unfortunately landed in Poland. And whatever the final conclusions may be, the world knows that Russia bears ultimate responsibility for this incident.
That is Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin agreeing with Polish President Duda that a missile that struck a Polish border town appears to have been launched by Ukraine in defense against Russian missiles. The two leaders also agree that while Ukraine may have launched the missile, the blame ultimately falls on Russia as its war on Ukraine continues. Joining us now, columnist and associate editor for the Washington Post, David Ignatius, former Democratic Congresswoman Jane Harman of California. She was ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, and former FBI Special Agent and National Security Analyst for NBC News, Clint Watts. Good morning to you all. Clint, let me start with you just on your assessment of how this is shaken out. When this news broke a couple of days ago, Russia has landed a missile inside Poland, a NATO member. What next? And slowly but surely, the intelligence agencies abroad and here in the United States took a look at it and said, it's looking more and more like this is a Ukrainian missile. President Zelensky notably still suggesting it was a Russian missile, but he kind of stands alone on that.
Yeah, not helpful, having this debate at a time when Ukraine has been doing so well. At the same point, it just shows you how tense that situation is. I mean, over 100 missiles being fired that day. All the anti-aircraft missiles going after those missiles. Now you're talking about several hundred missiles flying all over the country at any given time. It was natural that something like this would happen eventually. And I think everyone has been bracing for this happening to some degree. At the same point, the Russians are increasingly using dumber munitions. They can't do the same targeting that they did before. It's erratic and sporadic, and whenever that happens, it gets more dangerous. So we're at a particularly dangerous point, I think, with the missiles and the way the strikes are going on around the country.
And Jane, as the defense secretary said yesterday, yes, this looks like it was a Ukrainian missile and a tragic accident. But we have those defensive anti-aircraft missile installations in place because Russia is firing deeper and deeper into Ukraine and going after civilian targets.
Well, yes. And he also tried to reach his Russian counterpart, but I gather that phone call was refused. Not good. I think that Russia has lost, or is certainly losing, the ground war, and all they have left are dumb missiles and drones they're buying from Iran. This is pretty pathetic, but they're causing a lot of damage on the ground and still destroying civilian targets and infrastructure as the winter approaches. So it's still a bad deal, but it is pretty clear after careful work, and the Poles need to be commended too, because they did invoke Article 4 of the NATO Charter after careful work, that this was a mistake.
And David Ignatius, we certainly saw that Poland stood shoulder to shoulder with the United States and the rest of NATO. Nobody got out in front of each other. That certainly was good news. What else have we learned from this false alarm?
Joe, I think we've learned, in addition to just how dangerous this war is, the Russian onslaught the Ukrainians are trying so hard to defend against, we've learned that the system to calibrate precisely what's happening in the fog of war seems to work. This was the most dangerous moment that you could imagine. For many months, we have worried, the U.S. is worried that Russians might attack our supply depots moving from Poland into Ukraine, setting off an Article 5 so-called NATO reaction, which NATO would have to respond to an attack on NATO territory. In this case, people waited, they gathered evidence, they tried to make sure what had happened in the fog of war. Whose missile was this? And they found evidence that contrary to what they might have imagined initially, it was not a Russian missile, but a Ukrainian one, and we're able to forestall the kind of sharp reaction that could have led to rapid escalation in this conflict. So, one takeaway amid this terrible situation is that system works, and we should be glad that responsible, level-headed people are running it.
So, David, in you have a question and answer session with the readers every Monday at the Washington Post, and a lot of questions had to do with the end game, peace talks. You were skeptical that we were there, but you did say that both sides appear to be reaching an exhaustion point. What can you tell us about that? And what can you tell us about any reporting you have about both sides possibly inching closer to at least sitting down and talking to each other?
So, Joe, I don't think we're there yet. Everyone around the globe would like to see this war end. But as I noted in that discussion with readers, wars end because the parties decide that they simply can't gain their goals on the battlefield. They are exhausted, and negotiators find a way to get them out of the predicament. We're not there yet. And efforts by the United States or any other mediator to interpose in this conflict are, I think, a mistake. This has to be Russia and Ukraine talking, realizing that they need to come up with some compromise that they accept. It is interesting that our CIA director, Bill Burns, was just meeting with his Russian counterpart, Narishkin, in Turkey, and went on to see President Zelensky in Ukraine. I'm certainly going to be asking questions today about what happened in those meetings, but as near as we can tell, it was basically Burns warning the Russians about any escalation and the dangers of it. So as much as we hope that this winter could provide a transition point where the two sides could begin to talk about peace, I just don't see it yet.
Yeah, but Jane Harman, following up on David talking about the CIA Director Burns traveling and talking to his counterpart in Russia, if there were anybody that would be a key player in at least the start of negotiations from the United States side, it would be Director Burns, would it not?
It sure would. And he met with Putin personally, I think, before this ridiculous, unnecessary, illegal war started, but obviously to no effect. I just wanted to add to what David said, which is there's no room for compromise right now. And that's the U.S. position. And Lloyd Austin met with his counterparts, I think, this week, and almost $1 billion more aid is coming from Sweden and Germany and us and Canada. And that's what we have to do. There's no evidence that Putin keeps his word, and it ain't over until it's over. And it's going to be a brutal winter, but the strongest weapon in this fight is the Ukrainian heart. It's much stronger than dumb missiles or drones or tanks or whatever else has been used. And the Ukrainians are very well trained at this point, in part thanks to us, but in part also thanks to their enormous tech skills to withstand this. And boy, if Russia isn't pushed back here, we are going to have an Article 5 NATO confrontation, and that's not going to be good for anybody.
Clint, for all the reasons that Jane just laid out, General Milley said yesterday there's about zero chance that at this point that Russia just completely overruns Ukraine. With that said, even though they're retreating from places like Kherson, they're still lobbing missiles by 85 a day in some cases, and they're hitting infrastructure, power grids. We saw pictures yesterday of Ukrainian heart surgeons performing surgeries just with headlamps to continue to do their jobs. So what does this winter look like? Where is Russia right now? How long does this go on?
Yeah, I think we're at a major inflection point in the war, partly because this is the second mud season, which leads to frozen tundra. Yes, you could advance on positions, but it gives the Russians time to build fortifications. If you look at what's going on closer to Crimea, primary, secondary lines of defense are going into place, which I think it really brings us to the fight will expand outside of Ukraine. I think a lot of it has to do with, I would look for cyber attacks, particularly around energy in Europe. Putin sees that as his lever to try and bring the alliance to its knees. The other thing I would look for is influence operations. We oftentimes see the Russians playing around in populist movements, lots of protests and uprisings around inflation. And then the real wild card is what's going on inside Russia. We've not covered that very well over the last 6 months, but the war has come home. You're seeing people rising up against Putin. There's even statements from former leaders and current leaders inside Russia saying Putin needs to be removed or he should be assassinated. I've never heard that in my life. So that's a very different scenario that can play out for the winter. The squeezing is happening on both ends.